Excellent. Thank you everybody for joining Atomic Friday. This is where we get to do all the fun Atomic Red Team stuff. Today, we're gonna look at just detection methodology, how Atomic Red Team helps in that space, and we'll do more live demos because live demos are always. All right, so going to go ahead and dive in. Being Matt wasn't here, he actually tweeted this out on May 21st because we had already discussed the topic ahead of time. And so in this case, his tweet is here. I think Brian's going to post it as well. But his methodology in a nutshell is probably the same as a lot of us who've been doing this for a long time, or if you've been reading a lot of articles about, how to detect things, what people do to kind of go from, very broad to very specific. It's sort of like, it's going to be different for everyone. That's probably the hard part about Blue Team is we all have different products. We all have different ways we pull our event logs and whatnot. But I think in a nutshell, like Matt said, is, start with your most horrible, naive, brittle detection or your query, whatever you're performing. And so say, in our examples today, we'll go through scheduled tasks, but I'll use like PowerShell for right now. So, hey, I want to know all the PowerShell that's executing in my environment. And from there, I'm going to hone that in, right? So I might do some research, identify, hey, people encode their commands. I see there's things on any.run of malware doing this. I see on Twitter, people posting things about this, about PowerShell. Then I come back to my log analysis and I start saying, well, I know I need PowerShell event data. So you can go to MITRE ATT&CK, grab those data sources. Let's say you have EDR or PowerShell transaction logs. You grab that, you dump it, and you start looking through it. All right, so I know I need to look for encoded commands. I need to look for netcons from PowerShell. What other random things, right? And so you start building these little like logic pieces out and just keep going. It doesn't seem to end, right? Like there's frameworks out there, Invoke, obfuscation and whatnot. Empire does this, Unicorn does that, Cobalt Strike does this, and there's so many different variants and way things execute. Is it in memory? Is it just on the command line? And then you're trying to find all those different pieces. So Matt, this is a thread that Matt did, so definitely check it out. It's pretty good. There was a couple questions in there as well from some folks, but yeah, so like Matt said, it's pretty much just a cycle. A while back, I can't remember the time frame, but this is actually from a blog I wrote, and it's pretty much the same methodology. We just created like a nice little wheel that shows, when you're getting started on this, for looking at detection, when you're hunting things down, start very broad. Just say, again, look for all PowerShell, what's going on per endpoint, get that baseline, understand what's happening out there. And then over time, you start to add in like, hey, if it's an admin account that does this, or, a user who doesn't have administrative privileges, or a certain endpoint set, from finance shouldn't be running PowerShell. Why are they running PowerShell? And things like that. You can build out things over time. It's not an overnight job, right? It's always going to take time. So anyway, starting broad, start to focus your detection, your detector into it. Again, like that PowerShell encoded command, there's variances because it's PowerShell. So is it ENC, is it ENCO? And then all the different pieces. Or is it, just PowerShell making a netcon? Maybe there's no command line. So how are we going to be able to review that? Do we have enough context? Do we have, are we using EDR? You can just keying off of command line. If you're looking at transaction logs, you might see a more in-depth view of that. So there's lots of data out there. It's all just in finding the right one that you're able to consume at your scale. But yeah. And then the way I've always done it in the past is, we start hunting through our data, start digging through, mining it. And, we say, all right, we got this set. There's a lot of noise, always tons of noise. And now I need to start clearing out that noise and getting rid of things that are just normal. You know, we have administrators running PowerShell. Okay, like I don't need to look at that. What else is happening? And you start peeling those little pieces away and start ignoring them. And then you start getting down to just, hey, like out of, let's say, 20,000 endpoints, I have a few endpoints that do PowerShell, but it's not regular. And now I'm able to just key off or create a report, save a report that runs daily that I can just review and go from there. And then once I feel comfortable enough that this is pretty good logic, you can set an alert for it. So again, back to like PowerShell encoded command, you got your query down really tight. You're able, you know, nobody runs encoded command in my environment. I'll set that thing to alert and, you know, ship it to my email or whatever other product we have that does whatever it needs to do post, you know, alert. And then if it's something that's still kind of noisy, you're going to continuously improve it. You'll investigate it. Yeah, like MS Build runs on every developer machine. I need to tune that back, looking for, let's say, a parent process that spawns MS Build. Is it normal in my environment for MS Build to be spawned by Explorer or by PowerShell? So you can add those things in, and maybe that's a separate alert from just your standard MS Build, you know, detector that you know is pretty decent or just too noisy. So you may end up with 3 or 4. And I always think that's okay, depending on the product you have and the performance and whatnot. It's just all going to kind of come down to, you know, if you're okay investigating many things, many alerts, or is it just always going to be you have a report for that one particular process? So for like instance, MS Build, it may be just too noisy in my environment. I'll just leave it as a report, review it daily or weekly, set your own internal SLA on when it's okay enough. Like, you know, if a report says, you know, we detect a breach, you know, everyone detects breaches within a certain window and you're okay with a day, that's fine, right? And, you know, you probably have all kinds of other things built in as well. So you're able to alert on other behaviors at the same time that might lead up to that sort of execution. So anyway, that's like full circle, how everything kind of goes down. There's a lot of time that people put into like SIMs. There's a lot of content that comes based with SIMs and whatnot. It takes time. And I think this is where like projects, for blue teamers, projects like Sigma is extremely helpful. Florian and lots of people publicly help with Sigma, that project, being able to provide not just sysmon queries, but being able to drop in like Windows event logs. There's just things that we may not know about. And then where does Atomic Red Team fit in this? It's sort of similar, right? So you're just run a single test or multiple tests. And for instance, let's just pick like PowerShell again. So you run your Atomic Red Team T1086 today using Invoke Atomic. You execute it and you get that trace data in your platform, or maybe you didn't, and you need to start logging that. So you get it now, you have your data. Well, I don't have any logic today to alert on that. So then it goes into that cycle of building and tuning that detector or that detection capability for that. Now, Atomic Red Team doesn't have every variation or every like single thing that could happen of the usage or that like attack tradecraft built into it. And so that's where you, as the operator of your Atomic Red Team, using your atomics, you can go and create or craft your own test and use that for testing your internal resources. And then, of course, ship a PR, get that into the main Atomic repo so that everybody can use that as well. But yeah, so it just kind of goes along that line. Fortunately, we have a lot of tests in Atomic Red Team that can go through from testing install util under execution all the way down the line to, I think we have like some really basic like C2 COM ones using like command and PowerShell and whatnot. So we have a pretty good full coverage there. And then if you're just trying to like build out like a what we used to call chain reactions. You can execute, we have the whole setup for delivery now. So you can build a little quick Word doc, execute it, and then follow that chain, and then go back and just use Atomic like this similar cycle. Do I have detection for scheduled tasks? Did I even alert on that PowerShell that was put in there and whatnot? And just kind of go through the cycle. It takes a lot of time. Fortunately, like for me, when I moved into the role of like a SIM content engineer, we had sadly multiple SIMs, different ones. We like McAfee, ESM, and that was back in the day. We had Splunk, and then we had ArcSight. So we had to be able to generate similar detection capabilities across all three, where Sigma, where you can just run the Sigma utility, generate it once for each, and they have like the same. But so it just takes time, and building these out for every single, detail, minute thing can take a lot of effort and resources on the SIM management you're using, or the SIM platform or log analysis tool, or if you're using like PowerShell to just review logs and whatnot. So kind of goes all around. Yeah, so in the past, we've done like technique breakdowns like this. This is probably, if you've been following Atomic for a long time, I think Casey used this in one of his original talks for Atomic Red Team. I think this is one of his from his SmooCon talk. And very similar to what we're talking about, very similar to breaking it down. So we have that process name, you got your command line switches, the module that's being called, we have like the network piece here, is it going to a domain? Is it going to GitHub or wherever it's going? And so very good example of just taking that, what we see in the wild, and then breaking down those pieces. So Sigma project's on GitHub, and Florian Roth is one of the original creators of that project. You'll see his GitHub ID, his username on there, committing mostly to that. So cool. So similar to that RedSurf 32, we can now simulate that with Invoke Atomic. So if you wanted to do Invoke Atomic, can't remember the T1117, and you can just kick off all three of these tests right there. This will, there will be a local DLL execution, remote download from somewhere else. And so it's real easy to kick these off, simulate that behavior, and then go and build out like these types of pieces. You might find that just saying RedSurf 32 with a URL, HTTP or HTTPS, maybe that's enough. Or looking for that particular SCR object at the end is enough as well for RedSurf 32 detection for T1117. Or just having it all built, right? Like saying RedSurf 32 with switches, with modules at the end, or whatever you want to put, URLs, have like this good query built out, and maybe that's just what you really need in your environment. Having all the variations probably doesn't hurt either. So there's some really awesome resources that have come out in the last couple months as well, and I wanted to share these. These are both from Spectre Ops on, I believe it's a 3 or 4 part series on detection. And so detection spectrum, detection in depth is where this is from. Kind of like taking all this data, pulling it through, and then triaging, investigating, and then just kind of going on. Like that's basically how we all operate, when we take on this enormous amount of data and whatnot. And then I think it's the detection spectrum blog or in depth, can't remember now, where it talks about having very precise detectors to having very broad detectors. I'm kind of always like on all of the spectrum, because I like to be able to say like, create a report for RedSurf 32, because I always want to see what's happening in my environment, what's RedSurf 32 executing, how it's working and whatnot. And then I also want to say, hey, there is in the wild activity of these ones, so make a very precise one saying RedSurf 32 SCR obj, this is happening in the wild as well. And that might be it, right? There might not be much else that happens with RedSurf 32, So maybe over time, your report just becomes something you look at weekly or monthly, and it's good enough. So this is going to be pretty interesting. We'll get into our demos now. How can we apply this? So so kind of like, let's go through the whole flow now. Let's pick up a technique. Let's say scheduled tasks. Like this is a pretty good one now. Very easy. Questions you're going to be asking. Like if we're not ingesting this today, what do we need to identify scheduled tasks? Is it a Windows event log ID? Might be really easy to ship in. Is it process command line? Do we feel that that's good enough? And then you can always flip over to MITRE and they'll give you, what they recommend, and or wherever else too. You can Google around and whatnot, see what people are doing. So taking those things, building that, or starting to collect those sources and being able to go from there. And then are there key values that like scheduled tasks uses when they're created or modified. And that's where like looking a little bit deeper, this is from MSDN, just the Microsoft page. So just looking at like, okay, like now I know what you can do with the scheduled tasks. You can create them, you can force them, certain user context, you can, schedule it daily, hourly, every couple seconds. You can have a particular time it starts at. You can obviously name it. And then probably the most obvious one is like path and a file name of the executable to run. So there's a couple things here now that we can build on. We know that we can create a task. Well, in my environment today, I really don't know what people are doing with scheduled tasks. And that's where I want to start looking. I just want to know what's happening out there in my environment. So in the wild, if I Google around or if I look at MITRE's attack page for scheduled tasks, I see a couple one-liners for T1053 on MITRE's page. They have a couple that are just right there. You can obviously go down to the references, read all their references and pull out all kinds of cool things. But in this case, I'm like, okay, I see scheduled tasks / create. I just learned about that. I see all these other things. I know that like the TR says I want to run an executable on logon as system. So maybe those things are really interesting to me. I can create some very broad detectors on this. I can say scheduled task with an exe in the command line, or looking for on logon and little things like that. But again, I really don't know what's in my environment yet. I haven't looked. I don't even know if I'm even collecting the right data for scheduled tasks. And then you kind of go down. This other one here is a scheduled task executing W script. And then we also have another blog from Microsoft, which I thought it came out this year. It actually came out last year. Time is blurring. So the one from Microsoft that was really cool because it's saying scheduled task, execute MSI exec with a URL. So that's another one that we might be able to key on is saying, hey, like look for HTTP or HTTPS in the command line. So, but yeah, other variances, right? What is normal as far as a process goes? What is normal as a parent to spawn scheduled tasks.exe? Does it always get spawned by command? Is it PowerShell? Would it ever randomly come off of like WMIP or VSE? Those aren't things I'm worried about right now because again, I just want to know like what's even in my environment. I don't even know what's out there, right? So if you want to follow along at home, I went ahead and built a server that is running Splunk. It will expire. I'm going to kill it on Tuesday. You are very welcome to hop in here and play with it as well live. So yeah, so what I have in here is Splunk Boss of the SOC data for version 2 and version 3. We're going to grab a technique. We're going to grab our scheduled task technique. We've already kind of researched it, but I'll show a little bit more and we'll get in Splunk. We're going to look for scheduled tasks. We will build out a saved search. We'll build a report, and then we are going to set up a very basic alert for it. So yeah, be kind. Don't ruin it for everybody because there are folks who probably have not used Splunk. So I'm hoping that this information at least just kind of gets you started. I'll walk through the basic commands that we'll be running. And Brian has already posted the server username and password in the chats. Brian, do you want to go ahead and post the GitHub page as well for all my notes? So we'll post the notes. I've already published the notes, so the notes will be there for you. And you can follow along even by just copying and pasting. But yeah, so I'll give everybody a second to go ahead, capture your notes. I'm gonna go ahead and flip screens here. This is gonna be fun. I hear all the excitement. Excellent. Cool. So bring chat window back up here. All right, so I'm going to share, I'll drop the Atomic Friday link in there. This is a branch right now, just in case we come out with any new additional notes. And yeah, I'll drop that into the Atomic Slack. If it's not there. Oops. Cool. Yeah. You're good, Brian. I'm moving quick, I'm sure. No, we're good. We got good time. We got 30 minutes to get through this. We're gonna do all right. So yeah, I'll try to answer as many questions. Again, Splunk is pretty user-friendly. It's pretty easy to get through. You have my notes right here on our GitHub. So you're able to, see these things, copy and paste it, play with it, check it out. So back up, Boss of the SOC. What is Boss of the SOC? Splunk hosts an event yearly, maybe 2-3 times. They do other Splunk live events with Boss of the SOC. It is meant to help. It is a capture to flag event, and it really helps people to go from, I don't have this data, or I don't know how to use Splunk, to saying, wow, I know that I can now pull down this data, I can play with it. It's a capture to flag. You're trying to find flags throughout the data. There's Q&A, questions and answers that you have to answer. Actually, I think that password is wrong. It's actually Atomic Red Team lowercase. Sorry about that. But yeah, so it's capture the flag. But what Splunk did is they released the data to the public, and we can go and play with it. And so in our environment today, it has everything, bots V2 and V3, which are different. And they came out at different years. So the data is all different as well. I'm not gonna get into too much details of what each one has and whatnot, but yeah, so we're gonna focus specifically on scheduled tasks and going kind of back to the basics of what we talked about earlier, understanding what data you do have and how can I begin to look around for all of that. So username's Atomic, password's Atomic Red Team, all lowercase. Apologies for that. So when you first get into Splunk, it's a pretty simple dashboard. I didn't add anything cool here. So what I'll do now, easy as it is, just click the search and reporting thing over here on the left, the little app. And now you're within the search query bar, pretty easy from here. So I went ahead and copied this first one. I want to know what data I have. I'm going to just drop that in there. Browser over just a smidge. And in this case, you always want to change your search query, the time to all time. The data for bots is old. So I just hit it to all time. And then now you can see all of the data that we have in here. There's a lot. I think there's 200 and something million pieces of events in here. So hopefully you won't get too bored playing with it over the weekend. And so I see that I have lots and lots of context, lots of things I can play with. But in particular, what we're going to mess with is probably Windows event logs and Sysmon, because MITRE told me that that is mostly what I want to look at for scheduled tasks. And there might be a COM analysis in there as well. But yeah, it doesn't matter. We'll start digging in. All right, so that's my data. This is what I have in my environment, let's say. So in our environment today, I got a ton of data. I got a ton of products. But we're going to focus in on specifically looking at just sysmon data. So I've already created some basic queries in here. We've talked about our scheduled tasks. I'm going to pull this up. Now, let's just make it easy. Let's just look at all scheduled tasks in my environment because I don't know what's out there. I want to see. And because I don't know my data that well, I don't know if it's like a particular field that I need to type in here. Is it, you know, process equals or whatnot? So Splunk's simple enough. You can just say scheduled task.exe and it just finds all my scheduled task.exe like data out there. All right, so we've already got a bunch of events back. Now what, right? So I'm gonna just scroll down. I'm gonna close some windows on my other side here. Scroll down, I see that I have source types, I got sources. When you click sources, you're going to see your sysmon, and then you're going to see your Windows event log security. So we have two pieces of context here that we can drill into to try to understand a little bit more about where scheduled task events are coming from. So that was pretty cool, that was pretty easy. And I also see that I have 11 machines in my environment that have scheduled tasks. Some may have way more other scheduled tasks than others. So we might need to find out like why do some machines have tons and why do some have like very minimal. Now, I'm gonna go back. Let's go ahead and just say, let's look at all the command line. So where did I get that field from? On the left, we can see command line down here. Sometimes I have to do a command F and just type command line. There it is, all the way at the top. So you can click that just to have a quick view of what all of these are. And if you wanted to, you could just click top values and you'll get a quick little report. Since I already built it out, I'm just gonna run what I have. So now I'm saying, show me all scheduled tasks by command line. And slowly here, we're gonna get to building out that alert and that report that we wanna build. All right, so we got some data back. I already see some sketchy stuff. This is good. We're in a good place. I'm gonna flip it because there's something else I wanna see a little bit better. I wanna know scheduled tasks by host. I wanna know which machines are generating these scheduled tasks, like what's happening out there by machine, just in case. And so we've already found like this top line, there's something already weird happening. We got a PowerShell running something, right? Like there's sketchy things happening. And then I got a bunch of noise on my other workstations. I got Office doing automatic updates and all these other fun things, right? Cool, we're getting there. Now I know when I was reading and researching that /create is out there, and then all the other flags, right, that I can call. I could even narrow my search to just PowerShell on that command line because it looks really fishy to me. So let's flip over to our repo notes here. What do we got? So I'm gonna hop down just for the sake of time. Let's go down to, we've already did by host, so we're square there. Let's look at that Windows event log, that security event log. We kind of talked about it a second there. I'm gonna flip to this real quick. What's different? What does it show different to us? Let's find out. We know sysmon is providing, I think a few other people are querying in here too. We know sysmon's providing some data and related to the command line. That event log might be providing something a little bit different. So let's see what we get with that. Maybe, maybe not. Let's go ahead and do something real quick. I'm gonna flip out of this real fast just so we can get through our live demo, and then I will fix your all that fun stuff that's going on there. All right, so now we flip the context to the source of Windows Event Log Security Scheduled Task. Here it is by what created it and that command line. So again, we have, which we talked about earlier, we see PowerShell creating scheduled tasks. So kind of interesting. Cool. I'm gonna flip here. Let's go back. Let's look at, so there was a difference that I found earlier. Bots v3, I think, has a different sysmon version versus v2. And so the values for the fields were a little bit different. So I had to make two because I just wanted to show the difference there. So now flipping here, here's bots v2, schedule tasks. We got all those automatic updates, click the runs, and all the pretty noisy things. We need to start tuning this. But I want to know a little bit more about that parent process. I'm just curious. So I already built that query out. Here it is. Let's say, show me what is spawning those scheduled tasks, which we kind of answered, which is PowerShell. This is back to like that research phase, right? Like, you could just type schedule task / create, but I want to know and make sure in my environment that there's not like weird stuff going off in edge cases and in corners I don't know about. So that's how like you're going to basically kind of like drill in and start poking around on these things. So my end state is I want to build a report. I want to build an alert. So let's start tuning this. We know there's like these click to run things going on in there. Let's say we just say schedule task with PowerShell in that command line. Maybe that's enough for this, right? Maybe it's not going to show up on that page. Here it is. So maybe that's what I want to set my alert to. And in this case, maybe I would save it as a report, just something to monitor. But what about other command lines with other processes? Maybe this might just be too much. It's very narrow, right? Like I'm saying, only show me PowerShell. Well, you could put MS build. We saw MSI exec on a slide from a Microsoft blog. I know from that, we could run WScript. We could run all kinds of different things. So maybe this isn't like the perfect thing to go after. So let's change it. Let's just go ahead and start tuning out that noise. We already talked about just how there's already a bunch of noise in here. Let's show the noise one more time. Noise for the noise gods. There it is. Got your Office automatic updates and click the run stuff. So what I did here on this query is I said, I do not want to see, so command line does not equal Office automatic updates or Office click to run. Let's see what it gives us. You can flip this too. You don't have to do it on command line. We know that Office click to run or click to run.exe parent process can just be ignored, and then your data has been limited from there. So it's getting a little bit better, right? So if you look at that one more time, that parent one. So yeah, that's basically what I did. Forgot, you can go here, and like I said, you could do it based on the command line, or you could just say, I am just tired of that Office click to run. So I said here, I don't want to see that parent image anymore of Office click to run. I only want to get alerted when I have a scheduled task with create on that command line without Office click to run. So I've narrowed it in. This is based on my research that I want to know when a new scheduled task gets created in my environment. Here you go. I'm sure that over time, I'm going to get noise from this. So I will have to continuously tune this query because I might deploy a new thing that schedules tasks all the time, daily, weekly, or new software comes out and it has something going on. So yeah, but right now for me, schedule task create, it doesn't happen often, but when it does and it's not Office click to run, it's probably evil. Cool. It's there. All I'm going to do now is I want to save this as that report that we talked about. I like to have that report just show me command line by computer, which is what we have here. And all I have to do in Splunk is go to save as report. Highly recommend having a naming scheme that you want to follow with whatever product or query you're like things that you're using. So maybe like Windows, scheduled tasks, create. And I'm going to save it. And I'll modify permissions so everybody can see that. And go by user. Y'all can play with that if you want. I think there's already one in there too. So there. Now I can come in here daily and check out scheduled tasks that have been created. But now I want to alert on this. And the way I do this in Splunk, and I think other products are different, but sometimes I want to get an email on something, and or I want to just be sent a CSV report or whatever it is. So what I'll do here is I more or less just that same query, and I'm going to add a quick table to it because I want it to be a little bit more flat when I receive it. And so at the end of the same query that we did, ignoring Office click to run, I created a table, computer, user, command line, and time, because I want to know what computer, who did it, that command line, why did it alert, why am I getting this email right now, and the time. Was it today? Was it an hour ago? And depending on the product you're using for alerting and all that, or querying your data, everyone's going to be different. You might have like really high fidelity things running in real time, or you might have things running every half hour, every hour, whatever you want to do. It just depends, right, on your environment and how you want to operate it. We used to run our high fidelity things every hour, and then we would narrow things for like, not so important ones, or just things that are a little less down the line, maybe every couple hours. Then we had some daily ones that would just ship reports to us. So just depends on your environment, how many people you have, and all that fun stuff. Just gonna close this. All right. So simple enough. Now in Splunk, I'm just gonna save this as an alert. And every product's different, so don't want to make it sound like a Splunk sales pitch, but this is how I do it. You can schedule it daily, hourly, weekly, whatever you'd like, all these fun things. I do have a note in my notes that to throttle, there's a way to do like suppression in other products, like you want to suppress the endpoint for a certain amount of time so that you don't continuously get alerts for it. So every time it happens, say you want to suppress that endpoint for 4 days so that you don't have to keep getting alerts for those machines that we see in the background, and set a trigger. You can have it do whatever you want in Splunk, run a script, send an email, things like that. We'll just say log in, maybe not that one. We'll do triggered alert and remove that and save it. And that's it. So now I've created all these things. I know that over time I'll have to go back and tune this, just like we talked about in our slides that we had. So eventually I will need to go back and tune it because there will be general schedule tasks that crop up in there. Maybe I have admins starting new things on servers or whatever it may be. So we'll need to create some sort of list that is allowed to be ran on here. But now I know in my environment what scheduled tasks I want to look for. I know, just as like that report will show me daily or weekly, that I have lots of scheduled tasks. Some are very noisy. I can start creating that list of things to ignore. And then I want to hone this down. I can look at by parent. I can look at by command line, all that fun stuff. All right. Anything else on my notes? I think that's it. I'll spend a couple seconds on this, maybe a minute or two. But we saw that PowerShell was creating that scheduled task. And so now I want to look at those. I mentioned transaction logs, and I'm lucky to be in an environment where I have transaction logs. So again, you can follow along. You can pop this in, and this is going to show me all PowerShell transaction logs that are in my environment. So you can say, let's just look for scheduled tasks happening in those logs. Maybe nothing comes up. So let's just see it all again. And we can modify our query now to look for like those command lines and anything else that might be of interest. Let's see if I made that. I did make it. It's this one. So we see a couple things coming from probably those computers that we had looked at earlier. but I'm not going to get too crazy deep in here. So just wanted to share that. My transaction logs will show, like we talked about, like those encoded commands coming down. So we could create our query based on message. I'm going to flip up to here. I'm just going to have it show me the top values on that. And you can change that to like the stats command that we had been using earlier. So it'd be just stats values. And this will give us everything. If you haven't seen transaction logs, it's, as you can see, extremely verbose of what was happening. You can see the full command line that was executed on that endpoint. But yeah. And our last query here is on sysmon. So let's flip it. Let's just go to showing everything for PowerShell with just sysmon. So it'll be command line by computer. And you notice like those transaction logs, that message field was extremely verbose and whatnot. So now like you're looking at this, we talked about encoded commands, but like now we're seeing a lot of things happening in my environment. We talked about like -enc, maybe there's variations like enco, encoded commands, spell it all the way out, and all that fun stuff. You can find me on the Atomic Red Team Slack. If you're not on the Atomic Red Team Slack, head on over to atomicredteam.io.